Welcome to Beatsource Tech. My name is Mojaxx, and in this episode we're looking at the latest addition to Omnitronic's range of affordable rotary mixers, the TRM-222. There's something about the look of this one which has got people really excited, and that has made this one of the most requested reviews I've done. So let's find out if the mixer lives up to the hype. German brand Omnitronic have been flying the flag for affordable analog rotary mixers for much longer than most, and I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. I guarantee that of all the owners of high-end boutique rotary mixers today, a sizable number of those DJs took their first steps into the rotary world with an Omnitronic mixer. They strike the perfect balance of being good enough to use even at gigs, whilst also not breaking the bank. They've released a few models over the years, starting with the 202, which saw a couple of revisions. That was followed by the 402 with 2 extra channels, and then the 422, which added a load of new features, some I felt being a step too far. The TRM-222 comes in at a similar price to, or just less than, the 422, at around the $700 mark in the US. I'm not sure if Omnitronic have a distributor in the States, so if you're in that region you'll have to find a European store who can ship it to you. That pricing makes it seem like slightly less good value than the 422, this one only has 2 channels, but I think things like the analog VU meters help justify that cost. The 3 previous TRMs all followed the same kind of black box template, but the 222 has a style all of its own, and that got people pretty excited when it was first revealed. The silver faceplates immediately stand out, and I love how they look, both in regular lighting and in different colours, they really pop. The part I was less sure about at first was the sloping top panel. I generally prefer my DJ gear to be fully horizontal, but I got comfortable very quickly on the 222. There is a slope, but it's not too extreme, and I really dig how the top section is angled more towards you so you can see what's going on with those lovely analog VU meters. Where the 222 doesn't deviate from its older siblings is in both build and sound quality. At this point I'll refer you to the YouTube channel Mixers Inside. He did a very detailed breakdown of the 202 Mark III and he was very impressed, and he knows a lot more about electrical engineering than I do. I did some measurements of my own with the 222 and I found that everything matched pretty much perfectly with the 422, so I don't believe that Omnitronic are doing anything different with the audio components here. That means once again that whilst it isn't exactly the absolute peak of analog mixer sound quality, it does sound very good indeed considering the cost, and that goes for the phono preamps too. The same thing can be said for the build. Aside from the aesthetic changes, the 222 is built just like the other TRMs. Solid metal construction all around, bolted on metal pots with proper Alps blue velvets on the main rotaries and the Isolator, which feel great. When you have your hands on the 222, you really feel like you're getting your money's worth. Before I demo the mixer for you, I'll just run through the connectivity. On the front there are both sizes of headphone socket, and there's another large one on the rear which overrides the front. The mic input with its own dedicated controls is on a combo jack and XLR socket, always my preference. The 2 main channels have 3 sets of RCAs each. There's a switchable line and phono input, a dedicated line input, and timecode outputs. I don't give those enough credit really because they're clever. They mean you can leave your turntables hooked up directly to the mixer all the time and patch in an interface like say the Reloop Flux to use with your DVS software of choice as and when you like. There's a master insert on RCAs and the send and return loop is on 1/4" jacks. Outputs are comprehensive. Master and booth both have RCAs and XLRs, and there's a record output on RCAs which has its own level control. And finally there's an internal power supply with an IEC connector, which I always like to see. Right, we'll talk you through the functionality here on the TRM-222. The first thing I will point out, this is a bit of a digression, a bit of a side note, but if you are, like myself, an in-ear monitor user, or you stream on Twitch, for example, all in the headphones, you need to hear yourself speaking on the mic in the headphones, this is not the mixer for you. Because for whatever reason, the Q Master blend knob, if you switch that over to Master, that is before the mic, it's before the Isolator, so you can't hear the Isolator, and it's before the effects return. So wherever that is in the layout internally of this mixer, you know, the way they've structured the circuits, yeah, that master, you can't hear a lot of the stuff going on this mixer there. So yeah, just bear that in mind. To make this work for this demo, I've actually had to feed out from the booth output into channel 2, and I'm queuing channel 2 because that's the only way I can hear myself, I can hear the return, and I can hear the Isolator. But moving on. This thing is very similar. If you've watched my reviews previously of like the TRM-222 or the TRM-402, then this is going to be pretty familiar to you. There's not a lot really going on different. We have the lovely main rotary pots, nice smooth curve, and a great feel to them. We have the Q on each channel, and as I say, the Q Master Blend knob, almost kind of pointless in many ways, but it is there, plus split Q and lots of gain on the headphone volume. We then have the send, and I really like the send and return system on here. You have a master insert, which you can use, that's on the rear, but also you have the channel sends. These don't have activation switches or anything, they are just level knobs. So I can have the return always engaged up here up the top, set my level for that, and then I can send out to my, in this case, EFX 1000. And there's no pre or post fader switching, but I'm happy with post fader because it means I can get those lovely echo tails. And there's never any kind of popping or anything as I engage the effects because it's just on that rotary knob. So for me, that is, yeah, basically about as good as it gets with the send and return loop. You know, some people will prefer a pre-fader one, but yeah, I'm super happy with that. You've got the channel EQs, they are EQs, they're not full kill. They're perfect for adjusting the sound for different records, different pressings, whatever. We have the gain controls on each channel. As with all these Omnitronic mixers, tons of headroom on there. If I'm running loud cartridges on turntables, I barely need that gain knob turned up at all. Loads and loads of headroom. Just give you a bit more of that EQ. Then we have the switches for different sources. So you've got phono / line 1 and then line 2. This channel, you also have this aux input on the top as well, and this will override this source switch. So if you plug anything into that aux, then it would just become channel 1 is that source. I've tried that, it works perfectly fine. Then we move on up and we've got the Isolator, which I'm a big fan of, as I always have been on the TRMs. Very playable, nicely laid out, cut-off points 300 Hz and 4 kHz. Full kill and +9 boost, so enough but not dangerous. I just think it's a good isolator. I really do. I think it's great. We have the VU meters, so analog, lovely looking analog VU meters. I know that's a big thing, a big part of the appeal of this mixer to a lot of people. They look great. Backlit, obviously. Now you can choose whether to have the left and right LEDs enabled or not. So if you prefer them not. And then that central row of LEDs, that is for the Q level. So yeah, your visual metering on here, great. Moving back on down, we have a separate level control for the record output, really like that, that's unusual. Booth with its own output, bass and high EQ on the booth output. Main output volume. Obviously this channel is the same as the other channel. Then we've got the return there with an engage button and the return level. Then we move down to the bit that I'm not a fan of, right? The filter. These filters on these affordable analog rotaries just don't cut it for me as a rule. Simply because of getting in and out of them, right? So let's engage it. I'm sure you can hear there's our little kind of clicky, poppy sound. And it's there when you press the engage button as well. And you know, you could leave both channels enabled, but then it does change the underlying sound somewhat, depending on where you put the resonance. So with the resonance, you know, right up, you've got an extra kick in the bass. In the middle there, it's not doing a lot, but it doesn't. I don't know. I like the fact you can have both engaged on this and you can just leave it on. And if you can find a way to get that sound just right for yourself, then this one is more usable. And it is a great filter, like there's no doubt about that. Crank up that resonance and it sounds fantastic. You can do low pass as well. But yeah, it's just getting in and out of that filter for me still isn't quite there. And I appreciate on a mixer like this, they don't have the budget for like zero crossing switches and so on, and ways to make that, to mitigate those clicks and pops. But for me, it's just a feature that I generally wouldn't use. I'd rather they just took it away and either put a single filter with no resonance control on each channel, or just do without it altogether. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Would you make use of it? As I say, it's a great filter. It's just the getting in and out of it, for me, doesn't quite cut it. But yeah, and then the final thing I want to talk about is the crossfader here. So it's a nice crossfader. Cut-in distance is not that long. I've got it set to full sharp curve. It's decent enough, and I'm pretty sure it would be fairly straightforward to put an inner fader in this. And I do love the fact that if you decide you don't want the crossfader, then you just take it out, activate a switch inside to disengage the crossfader circuit, put the blank plate back on that comes with the mixer, job done. The only issue with that is that this unit that I got, and I think it's a retail unit, did not come with the correct Torx driver to do that replacement. So yeah, I wish it just came with a very cheap, you know, Torx key to be able to do that and take that out. But on the whole, yeah, I love it. You know, it's got a lovely smooth curve this way, if I turn the curve that way. And a decent sharp cut the other way. So if you are looking for a rotary with a crossfader on, this is one of very few options on the market, and I love the way they've implemented it. The idea that you can just get rid of it altogether. If it's not for you, get rid of it. Because I know some people like putting, you know, a crossfader on a rotary is like heresy. So you don't have to have it. You can have a blank plate there instead. Job done. So I think that's a really nice implementation. But yeah, overall, you know, I've looked at a lot of these TRMs before, or a few of them now, and I'm happy. I'm very happy with this thing. It performs really well. It feels very nicely laid out. This one in particular, very spacious. You know, this mixer is pretty big, front to back. This is a big old mixer. Nothing is squished together. The Isolator is super fun. The main rotary mixing, which is the whole point of the thing, is great. Nice EQs, great center return loop. As with all the TRMs before it, this is just a very, very fun mixer to use. After shooting that demo, I did go back in and examine the Crossfader situation further. After locating the correct Torx driver, I opened it up and went through the process of removing the fader. And that went very smoothly aside from one thing. There was some kind of adhesive on the fader connector. As Omnitronic are encouraging people to remove it, they really need to have a word with the factory and stop them applying that. What got me excited though was that the stock fader, and subsequently the space around it, is big. Plenty big enough to fit in a full-size inner fader. Now, I haven't checked with the inner fader team to be sure it's okay electrically, but I will be incredibly surprised if fitting one of those isn't possible on here. And at that point, you will not only have a rotary with a crossfader in it, but one that is an absolute scratch weapon. Awesome stuff. And finally, I'll mention another of those little detail things that Omnitronic seem to do, which I suspect nobody is asking for, but is still incredibly cool. On each side of the 222 is a small panel. Remove that and it reveals 3 sets of dip switches, which you can use to change the amount of cut for each of the 3 EQ bands. By default, they're plus and minus 9 dB, but you can have them cut much further if you so desire. Did they need to do this? Absolutely not, and I was happy with the stock setting. But having that extra adjustment, especially on an analog mixer like this, is a very cool thing indeed. So there you go, a look at the TRM-222 from Omnitronic. This is undoubtedly my favourite TRM to date. It's not really any different from the other models when it comes to the sound and the build. They're all largely the same level of quality in those areas. But there's something about both the look and feel of this one which really does it for me. The layout is very spacious and comfortable, and putting the filter aside, there aren't any design choices that I would argue with here at all. I know that having the crossfader on there isn't for everyone, but I love it, and Omnitronic have made it easy to not only bypass it, but remove it altogether if it isn't to your taste. Pricing, as ever, is incredibly reasonable for what you're getting, and overall I absolutely recommend the 222. Whether you're looking for your first rotary, or just want to have as your main mixer in any setup, the TRM-222 should serve you very well indeed. In the comments, let us know your experiences of the TRM range and what you think of the 222 in particular. Could it be appearing on your shopping list soon? As always, sound off down below. Thank you for watching this episode of Beatsource Tech. I do hope you've enjoyed it or found it useful. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to the channel and you turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. I'll see you next time.